The snow was falling hard on that cold February night in Cedar Falls, Iowa. The streets were empty. Most people were inside their warm homes, eating dinner with their families or watching television. But at 7:43 in the evening, a 911 call came in that would change many lives forever. The voice on the phone was small and shaking. It belonged to an 8-year-old girl named Lily. She was crying so hard that the operator could barely understand her words. "Please come," she whispered. "My mummy fell down. There is blood. Please help my mummy." The operator tried to keep Lily calm. She asked questions. Where was her mother? Where was the blood coming from? Was anyone else home? Lily answered as best as she could between her tears. Her mother was at the bottom of the basement stairs. There was blood on the concrete floor. Her stepfather Derek was there too. He was kneeling next to her mother. Within minutes, the ambulance and police cars arrived at the small house on Maple Street. The red and blue lights flashed against the snow-covered lawns. Neighbors came to their windows to see what was happening. They had always thought the Holt family was normal. Derek worked at the local car factory. Maria, his wife, worked part-time at a bakery. Little Lily went to the elementary school down the road. They seemed like any other family in the neighborhood. Paramedic James Turner was the first to enter the house. He found Derek Holt standing at the top of the basement stairs. Derek was a tall man with broad shoulders and short brown hair. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking. "She fell," he said before anyone asked him anything. "She was carrying laundry down to the basement. I heard her scream, and then I heard the crash. I ran over and found her at the bottom." James rushed down the stairs. What he saw made his stomach turn. Maria Delgado lay on the cold concrete floor. She was a small woman, only 32 years old. Her long dark hair was spread around her head, and blood was pooling beneath her skull. Her eyes were closed. Her body was twisted in a strange way. One of her arms was bent at an angle that was not natural. James checked her pulse. It was weak, but it was there. She was alive. He called up to his partner. "We need the stretcher now. She's critical." While the paramedics worked to save Maria, police officer Sandra Kim talked to Derek. He told her the same story he had told James. Maria had been doing laundry. She went down the stairs with a heavy basket in her arms. He was in the living room watching a basketball game on television. He heard a scream, then a loud series of thumps. He ran to the basement door and saw his wife lying at the bottom of the stairs. He rushed down and called for Lily to dial 911. Sandra wrote everything down in her notebook. Derek's story was clear. It was simple. It made sense. People fell downstairs all the time. It was a tragic accident. But something felt wrong to Sandra. She had been a police officer for 15 years. She had learned to trust her instincts. And right now, her instincts were telling her that something was not right. She looked around the house. The living room was neat and clean. The television was on, showing a basketball game, just like Derek had said. The laundry basket was lying on the basement floor near Maria's body. Some clothes had spilled out of it. Everything seemed to match Derek's story. Then Sandra noticed Lily. The little girl was standing in the kitchen doorway. She was small for her age, with curly brown hair and big brown eyes that looked too old for her young face. She was wearing pink pajamas with little stars on them. Her feet were bare, and she was holding a stuffed rabbit tightly against her chest. Sandra walked over to her slowly. She bent down so she could look into Lily's eyes. "Hi, sweetheart," she said in a soft voice. "My name is Sandra. I'm a police officer. I'm here to help. Are you okay?" Lily did not answer. She did not nod or shake her head. She just stared at Sandra with those big, empty eyes. It was like she was looking right through her. "Can you tell me what happened tonight?" Sandra asked gently. "Did you see your mommy fall?" Still nothing. Lily's lips were pressed tightly together. Her small hands gripped the stuffed rabbit so hard that her knuckles were white. Derek walked over. "She's in shock," he said. She saw her mother bleeding on the floor. It scared her. She hasn't said a word since she made that phone call. Sandra nodded, but she kept her eyes on Lily. The little girl's gaze shifted for just a moment. She looked at Derek, and Sandra saw something flash across her face. It was quick, just a second, but Sandra caught it. It was fear. Pure, raw fear. The paramedics lifted Maria onto the stretcher and rushed her out to the ambulance. Her condition was getting worse. They needed to get her to the hospital immediately. Derek said he would follow in his car and asked his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to watch Lily for the night as the ambulance drove away, its sirens cutting through the quiet night. Sandra stood on the front porch of the Holt house. She watched Derek get into his car and drive after the ambulance. She looked back at the house, where Mrs. Patterson was now trying to coax Lily into drinking some warm milk. Something was wrong here. Sandra could feel it in her bones. Derek's story was perfect, too perfect. He had answered every question without hesitation. Every detail was in place. Most people who just saw a loved one get badly hurt were confused and emotional. They forgot things. They made mistakes. But Derek had been calm. His story had been smooth, like he had practiced it. And then there was Lily. That look of fear when she saw her stepfather. That silence that seemed to go deeper than just shock. Children who saw accidents were usually full of questions and tears. They wanted to talk about it, to understand what happened. But Lily was not like that. She was hiding something. Or maybe she was hiding from someone. Sandra made a decision. She would not close this case as an accident. Not yet. Tomorrow, she would visit Maria in the hospital. She would talk to the doctors about her injuries. She would try to find a way to reach little Lily, and she would keep a very close eye on Derek Holt. The snow continued to fall as Sandra drove home that night. The streets were covered in white, clean and pure. But Sandra knew that beneath that beautiful surface, something dark was hiding, and she was determined to find out what it was. Little did she know that the truth would take months to uncover, and when it finally came out, it would not come from doctors or detectives. It would come from the one person everyone had overlooked, the small, silent girl in the pink pajamas who had seen everything. The doctors at Cedar Falls General Hospital worked through the night to save Maria Delgado's life. She arrived in the emergency room in critical condition. Her heart stopped twice on the operating table. Each time the medical team brought her back, they were not ready to let her go. Dr. Rebecca Stone was the lead surgeon. She had seen many accident victims in her 20 years of working in the hospital. She had treated people who fell off ladders, crashed their cars, and tumbled down hills. But when she examined Maria's injuries, something made her pause. Maria had a fractured skull on the back of her head. This was common in falls downstairs. But she also had 3 broken ribs on her left side and deep bruises on her back. Her left wrist was broken in 2 places, and there were marks on her upper arms that looked like fingerprints. Someone had grabbed her hard enough to leave bruises in the shape of hands. Dr. Stone called Detective Rosa Mendez. Rosa was known as the best detective in Cedar Falls. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind that never stopped working. She had solved cases that other detectives had given up on. When she got the call from Dr. Stone, she drove to the hospital immediately. The 2 women met in a quiet room away from other patients and staff. Dr. Stone showed Rosa the photographs of Maria's injuries. She pointed to each one and explained what she saw. "Look at these marks on her arms," Dr. Stone said. "These are not from a fall. Someone grabbed her, and the pattern of her broken ribs does not match a tumbling fall downstairs. It looks more like she was pushed from behind with great force." Rosa studied the photographs carefully. "Are you saying this was not an accident?" Dr. Stone took a deep breath. "I cannot say for certain, but I have been doing this job for a long time. My professional opinion is that this woman was attacked before she went down those stairs. At the very least, I believe she was pushed." Rosa thanked the doctor and drove to the Holt house. It was the morning after the incident. The sun was out, but the air was still cold. Snow covered the lawn and the roof of the small house. It looked peaceful, like nothing bad could ever happen there. Derek Holt answered the door. He looked tired. His eyes were red, and his clothes were wrinkled. He told Rosa that he had just come back from the hospital. Maria was still in a coma. The doctors did not know when she would wake up. They did not know if she would wake up at all. Rosa asked Derek to tell her again what happened. He told the same story. Maria was carrying laundry. She fell. He heard the crash. He found her at the bottom of the stairs. His words were exactly the same as the night before. Not one detail had changed. Most people, when they tell a story twice, change little things. They might say Tuesday instead of Monday or blue shirt instead of red shirt. This is normal. Memory is not perfect. But Derek's story was perfect. It was like he had memorized a script and was reading it out loud. Rosa asked if she could see the basement stairs. Derek led her through the house. The stairs were steep and made of wood. At the bottom was a concrete floor. Rosa noticed that the railing on the left side was loose. Derek said it had been like that for months. He kept meaning to fix it, but he never got around to it. Rosa took pictures and measurements. She looked at the angle of the stairs and the distance to the concrete floor. She tried to imagine how Maria had fallen. If she tripped at the top and tumbled down, where would her body land? How would she hit her head? Would the injuries match what Dr. Stone had described? They did not match. Rosa could see it clearly. The math did not add up. She went back upstairs and found Lily sitting on the living room couch. The little girl was still wearing her pink pajamas. Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor, was sitting next to her, trying to get her to eat some toast. But Lily just stared at the wall. She had not spoken a single word since the night before. Rosa sat down across from Lily. She smiled warmly. "Hi, Lily. My name is Rosa. I'm a detective. Do you know what a detective does?" Lily did not answer. She did not even look at Rosa. "A detective finds the truth," Rosa continued. "That's my job. I find out what really happened when something bad happens. And I think you saw what happened to your mommy, didn't you?" For a moment, something changed in Lily's eyes. There was a flicker of awareness, a small spark, but then it was gone. The little girl pulled her stuffed rabbit closer and turned her head away. Rosa did not push. She knew that children who had seen terrible things often shut down. Their minds tried to protect them from the horror of what they witnessed. Forcing them to talk could cause more damage. Lily would speak when she was ready. Rosa just hoped it would not be too late. Over the next few days, Rosa dug deeper into the Holt family's history. She talked to neighbors, co-workers, and friends. What she learned painted a troubling picture. Maria and Derek had been married for 3 years. Maria's first husband, Lily's father, had died in a car accident when Lily was just 2 years old. Maria met Derek a year later. At first he seemed kind and caring. He was good with Lily. He helped Maria when she was struggling to pay bills. He seemed like the perfect man, but things changed after they got married. Derek had a temper. He would get angry over small things. A dinner that was too cold, a toy left on the floor, a word spoken in the wrong tone. Neighbors heard yelling from the house. Maria's co-workers noticed bruises on her arms that she always explained away. She walked into a door. She fell in the garden. She was clumsy. She said. Rosa also learned that Maria had been planning to leave Derek, her best friend. Susan told Rosa that Maria had been saving money in secret. She was going to take Lily and move to her sister's house in California. She was going to file for divorce. She was going to start a new life, but she never got the chance. Maria's mother, Alina, arrived in Cedar Falls 2 days after the accident. She was a strong woman in her 60s with gray hair and kind eyes that were now filled with tears. She moved into the house to take care of Lily while Maria was in the hospital. Alina tried everything to get Lily to talk. She made her favorite foods. She read her favorite books. She sang the songs that Maria used to sing to her at bedtime. But Lily remained silent. She ate very little. She slept badly, waking up with nightmares that made her scream in terror. Derek stayed away from the house. He said he was spending his time at the hospital, sitting by Maria's bed. But Alina noticed that he only went there when other people were around. When it was just him and Maria, alone in that hospital room, he never stayed long. Alina watched him carefully. She had never liked Derek. She had seen the bruises on her daughter's arms. She had heard the fear in Maria's voice when she called late at night. She had begged Maria to leave him. But Maria was scared. She did not think she could escape. Now Maria was lying in a hospital bed, fighting for her life. And Alina was left with her silent granddaughter and a terrible question in her heart. What really happened on those basement stairs? The answer was locked inside an 8-year-old girl who had forgotten how to speak. And Alina prayed every night that one day Lily would find her voice again. 3 weeks passed. The snow melted and the first signs of spring began to appear in Cedar Falls. The trees started to show tiny green buds. Birds returned from their winter homes. Life went on for everyone in the small town. But for the Delgado family, time had stopped. Maria was still in a coma. The doctors said her body was healing, but her brain needed more time. They did not know when she would wake up. They could only wait and hope. Alina spent hours at the hospital every day, holding her daughter's hand and talking to her. She told Maria about Lily. She told her about the weather. She told her about the flowers that were starting to bloom in the garden. She believed that somewhere deep inside, Maria could hear her. Lily was getting worse. She had stopped eating almost completely. She had lost weight, and her eyes looked hollow. She refused to go to school. She refused to play. She just sat by the window in her bedroom, holding her stuffed rabbit and staring at nothing. The only time she showed any emotion was at night, when the nightmares came. She would scream and cry in her sleep, but when Alina rushed in to comfort her, Lily would go silent again. Detective Rosa Mendez was worried. She knew that Lily was the key to solving this case. The little girl had seen what happened. Rosa was sure of it, but without Lily's words, there was no way to prove that Derek had hurt Maria. The evidence was not enough. Derek's story could not be proven false, and Derek himself was still walking free. Acting like a worried husband waiting for his wife to recover, Rosa decided to bring in help. She called Dr. Erin Walsh, a child psychologist who specialized in working with traumatized children. Dr. Walsh had helped children speak about terrible things they had witnessed. She used special methods that did not force children to talk before they were ready. Instead, she let them express themselves in other ways. Dr. Walsh came to the house on a Tuesday afternoon. She was a tall woman with short blonde hair and a gentle smile. She carried a large bag full of toys, dolls, and art supplies. Alina met her at the door and led her to Lily's room. Lily was sitting in her usual spot by the window. She did not look up when Dr. Walsh entered. She did not react when Dr. Walsh sat down on the floor near her. Dr. Walsh did not try to make Lily talk. She simply started to unpack her bag. She pulled out paper and crayons. She pulled out clay in many colors. She pulled out a set of small dolls that looked like a family, a mother, a father, and a little girl. She spread everything out on the floor and began to draw a picture of a house. She hummed softly as she worked. For a long time, nothing happened. Lily stayed by the window, motionless. But Dr. Walsh noticed that the little girl's eyes had moved. She was watching. She was curious. This was a good sign. Dr. Walsh finished her drawing and held it up. "Look," she said softly, not looking at Lily. "I drew a house. It has a red door and a yellow roof. I wonder what is inside this house." She put the drawing down and picked up the family of dolls. She placed them in front of her and began to move them around, making up a simple story. The mother doll was cooking dinner. The little girl doll was playing with a ball. The father doll was sitting in a chair. "This family lives in the house," Dr. Walsh said. "They do things together. Sometimes happy things. Sometimes sad things." Lily's hand moved slightly. Her fingers loosened their grip on the stuffed rabbit. Dr. Walsh pretended not to notice. She continued playing with the dolls, making them talk to each other in silly voices. The mother doll asked the little girl doll what she wanted for dinner. The little girl doll said she wanted ice cream. The mother doll laughed and said maybe after vegetables. 20 minutes passed. Then something wonderful happened. Lily stood up from the window. Slowly, carefully, she walked across the room. She sat down on the floor next to Dr. Walsh. Her eyes were fixed on the dolls. Dr. Walsh's heart beat faster, but she kept her voice calm and gentle. She handed the little girl doll to Lily. "Would you like to play?" she asked. Lily took the doll. She held it in her small hands and looked at it for a long moment. Then she picked up the mother doll with her other hand. She held them both, one in each hand, and began to move them. The mother doll walked across the floor. The little girl doll followed behind. They walked to a spot near the edge of the carpet, where it dropped down to the harder floor below. A small step, but to Lily it meant something. Dr. Walsh watched closely. Her training had taught her that children often used play to show what they could not say with words. She stayed silent and let Lily lead. Lily placed the mother doll at the top of the step. Then she picked up the father doll. She moved it behind the mother doll. And then, with a sudden violent motion, she made the father doll push the mother doll hard. With both hands, the mother doll fell off the carpet and hit the floor below. It landed face down and did not move. Dr. Walsh felt a chill run through her body. She kept her voice steady. "What happened to the mummy?" she asked softly. Lily did not speak, but she showed the action again. She put the mother doll back at the top of the step. She moved the father doll behind her. And again, she made the father doll push the mother doll with both hands. Arms stretched out, fingers spread wide. This was not a trip. This was not an accident. This was a deliberate push. Dr. Walsh asked more questions through the dolls. She asked where the little girl doll was when this happened. Lily moved the little girl doll to a spot nearby, watching. She asked what happened after the push. Lily made the father doll walk down to where the mother doll lay. He stood over her for a moment, then walked away. Lily's hands were trembling now. Tears were falling silently down her cheeks. But she did not stop. She showed the scene again and again, each time the same way. The push was always from behind. The hands were always spread wide. The force was always strong. Dr. Walsh gently took Lily's hands in hers. "You are so brave," she whispered. "What you showed me is very important. You did nothing wrong. You are a good girl. Your mummy would be so proud of you." Lily looked up at Dr. Walsh. Her lips moved, and for the first time in 3 weeks, she spoke. "He pushed her," she whispered. Her voice was small and broken, like a bird with injured wings. "Derek pushed my mummy." Those 4 words changed everything. Dr. Walsh called Detective Rosa immediately. She explained what Lily had shown her. Rosa drove to the house within minutes. She watched as Lily repeated the scene with the dolls. She saw the push. She saw the hands. She saw the truth that had been locked inside this little girl for 3 long weeks. That same evening, Maria woke up from her coma. Her eyes opened slowly. She looked around the hospital room, confused and scared. Alina was there, holding her hand, crying tears of joy. The doctors rushed in to check her condition. Everyone was asking questions. How did she feel? Did she know where she was? Did she remember what happened? But Maria's memory was a blank. She remembered cooking dinner. She remembered Lily doing her homework at the kitchen table. She remembered starting to fold laundry. After that, nothing. The fall, the push, the pain, all of it was gone, erased by the trauma to her brain. She could not help with the case against Derek. She could not tell the police what happened. Her memory might come back someday, the doctors said. Or it might not. Brain injuries were unpredictable. But it did not matter as much now, because little Lily had finally found her voice, and the truth she carried was more powerful than anyone could have imagined. The real fight was just beginning. The arrest of Derek Holt made the front page of every newspaper in Iowa. The story was shocking. A man accused of pushing his wife down the stairs. A woman who almost died but survived. An 8-year-old girl who witnessed it all and held the truth inside her for weeks. People in Cedar Falls could not stop talking about it. Derek was arrested at his workplace on a Thursday morning. 2 police officers walked into the car factory and put handcuffs on his wrists in front of his co-workers. He did not fight. He did not try to run. He just stood there with a look of disbelief on his face, saying over and over, "This is a mistake. I didn't do anything." She fell. She fell. At the police station, Derek was charged with attempted murder. The crime was serious. If found guilty, he could spend decades in prison. Derek said nothing more without his lawyer. He sat in the small room with his arms crossed, his jaw tight, and his eyes full of cold anger. The news spread through the town like wildfire. Some people were relieved. They had always thought something was wrong with Derek Holt. They had heard the yelling from the house. They had seen the bruises on Maria's arms. They believed that justice was finally being served. But others were not so sure. Derek had friends at the factory. He had buddies he played cards with every Friday night. He had neighbors who remembered him helping to shovel snow from their driveways. To them, Derek was a good man, a hard worker, a helpful neighbor. They could not believe he would hurt his wife. And then there was the question that everyone whispered about but few said out loud. Could you really trust the memory of an 8-year-old girl? Derek's family hired Martin Corwell to defend him. Corwell was one of the most famous lawyers in the state. He was known for winning cases that seemed impossible to win. He was tall and thin with gray hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through people. He dressed in expensive suits and spoke in a deep, confident voice. Juries liked him. They trusted him. He had a way of making them doubt everything they thought they knew. Corwell held a press conference outside the courthouse. Cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. He raised his hand for silence, then spoke. "My client is innocent," he said firmly. "Derek Holt is a loving husband who is devastated by what happened to his wife. Maria fell down the stairs. It was a tragic accident. Nothing more." He paused and looked directly into the cameras. "The only evidence against my client comes from an 8-year-old child who was traumatized by seeing her mother injured. Children at that age cannot always tell the difference between what they saw and what they imagined. We will prove that Lily's account is unreliable. We will prove that Derek Holt is not guilty." His words hit the town like a bomb. Suddenly everyone was talking about Lily. Could an 8-year-old really be a witness in a case like this? Was her memory accurate? Had she been coached by someone who wanted to hurt Derek? The questions swirled around like leaves in a storm. Prosecutor Anna Chen knew she had a difficult road ahead. She was a young lawyer, only 34 years old, but she had already won several important cases. She was smart, determined, and passionate about justice. When she read the file on Derek Holt, she knew immediately that this was one of the most important cases of her career, but she also knew the challenges she faced. Maria could not remember what happened. There were no cameras in the house. There were no other witnesses. The physical evidence suggested a push, but it could not prove it beyond doubt. Everything depended on Lily. Anna met with Dr. Walsh to learn more about how Lily had communicated what she saw. Dr. Walsh explained the doll exercise. She showed Anna videos of Lily acting out the push with the dolls. In the videos, Lily's movements were clear and consistent. Every time she showed the push, it looked the same. The father doll always approached from behind. The hands were always spread wide. The push was always strong and deliberate. Children who make up stories usually change details each time they tell them, Dr. Walsh explained. But Lily shows the same actions over and over. Her memory is consistent. That suggests she is remembering something real. Anna nodded, but she was worried. A jury might not understand the science of child memory. They might not trust a little girl's demonstration. And Martin Corwell would do everything in his power to make Lily seem confused and unreliable. Maria was released from the hospital 6 weeks after the accident. She was still weak and had trouble walking. She used a cane and moved slowly. Her memory of that night never came back. The doctors said it probably never would. But Maria did not need her memory to know what happened. She knew Derek. She knew what he was capable of. She had felt his hands on her before grabbing, pushing, hurting. She had seen the look in his eyes when he was angry. She had no doubt that he had tried to kill her. Lily wouldn't lie, Maria told Anna during their first meeting. She is the most honest child I have ever known. If she says Derek pushed me, then Derek pushed me. I believe her with all my heart. Maria moved into her mother Elena's small apartment. There was not enough room for all of them, but they made it work. Lily shared a bed with her mother. Elena slept on the couch. They were cramped and tired, but they were together. They were safe, and that was all that mattered. The community remained divided. Some families brought food and flowers to Elena's apartment. They offered help with money and transportation. They wore purple ribbons to show support for Maria, the color of domestic violence awareness. They stood outside the courthouse with signs that said justice for Maria and believe survivors, but others stood on the other side. Derek's supporters wore white ribbons and carried signs that said innocent until proven guilty in due process for Derek. They said the media had already convicted him. They said Lily had been influenced by her grandmother, who had never liked Derek. They said the whole thing was a setup by a woman who wanted a divorce and a big settlement. Lily did not understand why people were fighting about her. She was just a little girl who had seen something terrible. She had told the truth because Dr. Walsh helped her find a way. She did not know that her words would split a town in half. She did not know that her memory would be questioned by thousands of strangers who had never met her. The pressure on Lily was enormous. Reporters camped outside Elena's apartment. Cameras followed her when she walked to the car. People pointed and whispered when they saw her in public. She started having nightmares again. She stopped eating again. The progress she had made with Dr. Walsh began to slip away. Dr. Walsh increased her visits 2-3 times a week. She worked hard to keep Lily stable. She taught her breathing exercises. She helped her draw pictures of safe places. She reminded her again and again that she was brave, that she had done the right thing, that the truth was important. "You are not on trial," Dr. Walsh told Lily gently. "You don't have to prove anything. You just have to tell the truth. That's all anyone can ask of you." But deep down, Dr. Walsh was worried too. She had seen what happened to child witnesses in big cases. Tough lawyers could break them down with questions. Juries could dismiss their words as fantasy. Justice did not always win. Sometimes, the truth got lost in the noise. Anna Chen spent weeks preparing for the trial. She gathered every piece of evidence she could find. She talked to neighbors who had heard arguments from the Holt house. She found co-workers who had seen bruises on Maria's arms. She brought in experts who explained how Maria's injuries matched a push, not a fall. But she knew it would all come down to Lily. The little girl would have to take the stand. She would have to face Martin Corwell and his sharp questions. She would have to tell her story in front of a room full of strangers. Could an 8-year-old girl do that? Could she stay strong under pressure? Could she make a jury believe her? Anna did not know the answers to those questions. But she knew one thing for certain. She would fight with everything she had to give Lily the chance to be heard. The trial was set for October. The whole town was waiting. The whole country was watching. And somewhere in a small apartment, a little girl with curly brown hair was holding her stuffed rabbit and trying to be brave. The biggest test of her young life was about to begin. October came to Cedar Falls with golden leaves and cool winds. The trees along Main Street turned orange and red. Children dressed in costumes for Halloween. Farmers brought pumpkins and apples to the weekend market. But underneath all this normal life, the town was holding its breath. The trial of Derek Holt was about to begin. The courthouse was an old brick building in the center of town. It had tall white columns in front and a big clock tower on top. On the first day of the trial, every seat inside was taken. People lined up outside for hours hoping to get in. Television cameras set up across the street. Reporters from all over the country came to cover the story. The case of the silent girl who finally spoke had captured the nation's attention. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. The room was large, with dark wooden walls and high ceilings. Sunlight came through the tall windows and fell in squares on the floor. The American flag stood in one corner. The state flag of Iowa stood in another. Between them, behind a raised wooden desk, sat Judge Eleanor Vance. Judge Vance was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and a calm, steady manner. She had been a judge for 25 years. She had seen every kind of case, murders, robberies, frauds, and more. She was known for being fair but firm. She did not allow games in her courtroom. She did not allow lawyers to bully witnesses. She believed in the law, and she believed in truth. Derek Holt sat at the defense table with his lawyer, Martin Corwell. Derek was wearing a navy blue suit and a red tie. His hair was neatly combed. He looked calm, almost relaxed. He smiled at the jury when they walked in. He wanted them to see him as a regular man, a good husband, someone who could not possibly hurt his wife. At the other table sat prosecutor Anna Chen. She wore a simple black suit and no jewelry except for a small gold pin on her collar in the shape of scales of justice. She had spent months preparing for this moment. Her table was covered with folders and papers. Behind her, in the first row of seats, sat Maria. Maria looked different now than she had before the accident. She had lost weight. Her face was thinner, and her eyes had dark circles under them. She walked with a cane and sat carefully, like every movement caused her pain. But her eyes were clear and determined. She was not hiding. She was not afraid. She wanted the world to see what Derek had done to her. Lily was not in the courtroom yet. She would be brought in later, when it was time for her to testify. Until then, she was in a special waiting room with Dr. Walsh and her grandmother. Alina. Dr. Walsh had spent the morning helping Lily stay calm. They did breathing exercises together. They talked about brave things. Dr. Walsh reminded Lily that all she had to do was tell the truth. Judge Vance called the court to order. The trial began with opening statements. Anna Chen stood up and walked slowly to the jury box. There were 12 jurors, 8 women and 4 men. They came from different backgrounds. Some were young, some were old, some had children, some did not. They all had one job: to listen to the evidence and decide if Derek Holt was guilty or innocent. Anna spoke in a clear, steady voice. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a simple case. On the night of February 14th, Derek Holt pushed his wife Maria down the basement stairs. He wanted to kill her. He almost succeeded. Maria spent weeks in a coma. She nearly died. Her skull was fractured. Her ribs were broken. She still cannot walk without a cane. She paused and let her words sink in. Derek Holt will tell you it was an accident. He will tell you that Maria fell while carrying laundry. But the evidence tells a different story. The pattern of Maria's injuries shows that she was pushed from behind with great force. And there is a witness, an 8-year-old girl named Lily, who saw everything. She saw her stepfather put his hands on her mother's back. She saw him push. She saw her mother fall. Anna returned to her seat. The jury was listening carefully. Some of them looked at Derek. Some looked at Maria. All of them wondered what they would hear next. Martin Corwell stood up slowly. He buttoned his jacket and walked to the center of the room. He did not rush. He moved like a man who had all the time in the world. "Good morning," he said warmly to the jury. His voice was deep and friendly. "Let me start by saying something important. My heart goes out to Maria Delgado. She suffered a terrible accident. Her injuries were severe. Her recovery has been long and painful. No one in this room wishes her anything but the best." He paused and shook his head sadly. But wanting justice for Maria does not mean convicting an innocent man, and that is exactly what the prosecution is trying to do. They want you to send Derek Holt to prison for something he did not do. Corwell walked closer to the jury box. He looked each juror in the eye. The prosecution's entire case rests on the words of an 8-year-old child, a child who was traumatized by seeing her mother hurt. A child who did not speak for 3 weeks after the incident. A child whose testimony was not given in words at first, but through playing with dolls. He let out a small laugh, as if the idea was ridiculous. Think about that for a moment. The prosecution wants to send a man to prison for attempted murder based on how a little girl moved some dolls around on a floor, not based on physical evidence that proves a push, not based on Maria's own memory because she has no memory of that night, not based on video or audio recordings, just dolls, pushed by the hands of a scared, confused child. Corwell walked back to the defense table. I will show you that Lily's account is not reliable. Children her age often mix up what they saw with what they imagined. They can be influenced by adults without even knowing it. They want to please the people they love. And Lily loves her mother and grandmother very much. If she would do anything to help them even believe something that never happened. He sat down and folded his hands on the table. When all the evidence is presented, you will see the truth. Maria Delgado fell down the stairs. It was a terrible, tragic accident. Derek Holt tried to help her. He called for help. He waited by her side at the hospital. He is not a murderer. He is a husband who almost lost his wife to a fall, and he deserves to go home. The morning continued with testimony from the paramedics who responded to the 911 call. They described the scene they found. Maria lying on the concrete floor, blood pooling under her head, Derek standing at the top of the stairs, Lily frozen in the kitchen doorway. Dr. Rebecca Stone took the stand next. She explained Maria's injuries in detail. She used diagrams to show where the fractures were. She pointed out the bruises on Maria's arms that looked like fingerprints. She explained why the injuries did not match a simple fall. In my professional opinion, Dr. Stone said, these injuries are consistent with being pushed from behind with significant force. The pattern of the skull fracture, the location of the broken ribs, the finger-shaped bruises, all of these point to an assault, not an accident. Corwell cross-examined Dr. Stone aggressively. He asked if she could prove beyond doubt that Maria was pushed. She admitted she could not. He asked if it was possible, even if unlikely, that Maria could have gotten these injuries from a fall. She admitted it was possible. He pointed out that Dr. Stone had never examined a live victim, only looked at photographs and records, so you never actually touched Maria's injuries yourself. Corwell asked. No, Dr. Stone admitted. I reviewed the medical records and imaging, so everything you've said is based on your interpretation of documents created by other people. My interpretation is based on 20 years of experience and— Thank you, Dr. Corwell interrupted. No further questions. The afternoon brought more witnesses. Neighbors who heard arguments, co-workers who saw bruises, Maria's best friend Susan who testified about Maria's plan to leave. Derek, each one added a piece to the puzzle, but everyone knew the most important testimony was still coming tomorrow. Lily would take the stand. That night, in Elena's small apartment, Lily could not sleep. She lay in bed next to her mother, staring at the ceiling. Her stuffed rabbit was pressed against her chest. Her heart was beating fast. Maria held her daughter close. She whispered softly in her ear, "You are the bravest girl I know. Tomorrow, just tell the truth. That's all you have to do. Tell them what you saw. I will be right there watching you. I will be so proud of you." Lily nodded, but her eyes were full of fear. Across town, Martin Corwell sat in his office, reviewing his notes. He had questioned hundreds of witnesses in his career. He had broken down adults twice his size. Tomorrow, he would face an 8-year-old girl. He felt confident that by the time he was done, the jury would have serious doubts about everything she said. He did not feel guilty about what he was going to do. He was a defense lawyer. His job was to protect his client, and if that meant making a little girl look unreliable, then that was what he would do. The stage was set. The players were ready, and when the sun rose over Cedar Falls the next morning, it would shine down on a courtroom where a little girl would fight to make the truth be heard, that everything was about to change. The morning sun was bright when Lily walked into the courtroom. She was wearing a simple blue dress that her grandmother had bought for her. Her curly brown hair was tied back with a white ribbon. She held her stuffed rabbit in one hand and Dr. Walsh's hand in the other. Her eyes were wide as she looked around the big room filled with strangers. The courtroom fell silent when she entered. Every head turned to look at her. The jurors leaned forward in their seats. The reporters stopped writing. Even Martin Corwell paused and watched as the small girl made her way to the front of the room. Judge Vance spoke gently. "Good morning, Lily. Please come sit in this chair right here." She pointed to the witness stand, a wooden box with a chair inside it, raised up so everyone could see. Lily looked at the chair. It seemed very big and very high. Her legs were shaking as she climbed up and sat down. The chair was too tall for her. Her feet did not touch the floor. They dangled in the air like a much younger child's. A court officer brought a small step stool and placed it under her feet. Lily put her feet on it and felt a little better. She was still holding her stuffed rabbit. Judge Vance did not ask her to put it down. She understood that the rabbit helped Lily feel safe. Before the questioning began, Judge Vance needed to make sure Lily understood what it meant to tell the truth. This was required by law for all witnesses, but especially for children. "Lily," the judge said kindly, "do you know what it means to tell the truth?" Lily nodded. "It means saying what really happened," she said in a small voice, "not making things up." That's right. And do you know what happens if someone doesn't tell the truth in court? They get in trouble, Lily said. Yes, they do. So I need you to promise me that you will only tell the truth today. Can you do that? I promise, Lily whispered. Judge Vance nodded. Very good. You may proceed, Ms. Chen. Anna Chen stood up and walked slowly toward Lily. She had practiced this many times. She knew she needed to be gentle, to make Lily feel comfortable, to let her tell her story in her own way. Hi, Lily, Anna said with a warm smile. Thank you for being here today. I know this is a little scary, but you're doing great. I just want to ask you some questions about what happened at your house back in February. Is that okay? Lily nodded. Double quotes. Can you tell me what you remember about that night? The night your mummy got hurt. Lily was quiet for a moment. She squeezed her rabbit tightly. Then she began to speak. I was in the kitchen, she said. I was doing my homework. Mommy was folding clothes. She was going to take them to the basement. Where was Derek? Anna asked. He was watching TV. He was in the living room. Okay, what happened next? Lily's voice got quieter. Mommy picked up the basket. She walked to the basement door. Derek got up from the couch. He followed her. Did you see what happened at the basement door? Lily nodded. Her eyes were filling with tears. I got up to get a drink of water. I could see the door from where I was standing. Mummy was at the top of the stairs. Derek was behind her. What did you see Derek do? A single tear rolled down Lily's cheek. He pushed her. He put his hands on her back and pushed her hard. She fell down the stairs. I heard her scream. Then I heard banging sounds. Then it was quiet. The courtroom was completely silent. Some of the jurors had their hands over their mouths. One woman was wiping her eyes. Maria sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, her hand pressed against her heart. Anna continued gently. What did Derek do after your mommy fell? He stood there for a second. Then he walked down the stairs. He looked at her. Then he came back up and told me to call 911. He said Mummy fell. He said it was an accident. But you saw him push her? Yes, Lily said firmly. I saw him. Anna thanked Lily and returned to her seat. She had done what she needed to do. Lily had told her story clearly and simply. Now came the hard part. Martin Corwell stood up slowly. He straightened his tie and walked toward Lily with a friendly smile on his face. He looked like someone's grandfather, kind and gentle, but his eyes were sharp and his mind was working fast. Hello, Lily, he said warmly. My name is Mr. Corwell. I just have a few questions for you. Is that all right? Lily looked at him nervously. She nodded. Now, Lily, you said you were in the kitchen doing your homework. Is that right? Yes. And you said you got up to get a drink of water. That's when you saw what happened at the basement door. Yes. How far is the kitchen from the basement door? Lily, is it close or far away? Lily thought about it. It's not too far, but not really close either. I see. So you were looking from a distance. You weren't standing right next to them, no? And where exactly were you standing when you saw this happen? Were you by the sink? By the refrigerator? By the table? Lily hesitated. I was near the counter, where the glasses are. The counter by the window, or the counter by the stove? The one by the window. Corwell nodded. He walked over to a large diagram of the house that had been set up on an easel. He pointed at different spots. So you were here, by this counter, and the basement door is over here. Is that correct? Lily squinted at the diagram. I think so. You think so? You're not sure. It looks right, Lily said, her voice getting smaller. Okay. Now, Lily, you said Derek put his hands on your mummy's back and pushed her. Can you show me exactly how he did that? Lily raised her small hands and pushed them forward in the air. Was it like this? Corwell mimicked her motion, pushing with his palms flat. Or was it more like this? He changed his hands so his fingers were pointing up. Or maybe like this. He showed another variation. Lily looked confused. I don't remember exactly how his hands looked. You don't remember, but you said you saw him push her. I did see him push her, but you can't tell me how his hands were positioned. Lily's face was getting red. He pushed her. That's what I saw. Corwell kept his voice calm and gentle, but his questions were getting harder. Lily, when Derek was standing behind your mummy, was he facing her back, or was he turned to the side? He was behind her, directly behind her, or a little to the left, a little to the right. I don't know. Behind her. Was your mommy holding the laundry basket when she fell? Or had she already put it down? Lily's brow wrinkled. I think she was holding it. You think? You're not sure. She had the basket. I remember the basket, but was it in her hands when she fell? Or on the floor? I don't remember. Corwell walked back toward the jury. Lily, after your mummy fell, you didn't talk to anyone for 3 weeks. Is that right? Yes. 3 weeks is a long time. Why didn't you tell anyone what you saw? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. I was scared. Scared of what? Scared of Derek. Scared of what he would do. But Derek wasn't living with you anymore after that night. He was staying somewhere else. Why were you still scared? Lily didn't answer. She looked down at her rabbit. Lily, during those 3 weeks, did anyone talk to you about what happened? Your grandmother? Your mother's friends? Anyone? I don't remember. You don't remember if people talked to you about the accident? They asked me questions, but I didn't answer. But you heard their questions. You heard what they were saying about Derek. Is it possible that what you think you saw is really just what other people told you happened? No. Lily's voice cracked. I saw it. I saw him push her. But you can't remember how his hands looked. You can't remember if your mother was holding the basket. You can't remember exactly where you were standing. How can you be so sure you remember the push correctly? Lily was crying now. Tears streamed down her face. Her small body shook with sobs. I saw it, she kept saying. I saw it. I saw it. Judge Vance raised her hand. Mr. Corwell, I think the witness needs a short break. Corwell nodded politely. Of course, Your Honor. I have no further questions. He walked back to his seat with the calm satisfaction of a man who had done exactly what he set out to do. He had not called Lily a liar. He had not been mean to her. He had simply asked questions, simple questions that she could not answer clearly. And in doing so, he had planted seeds of doubt in the minds of the jury. As Lily was led out of the courtroom by Dr. Walsh, the jurors looked at each other with uncertain expressions. They had heard a little girl say she saw a push, but they had also seen that little girl struggle to remember basic details. They had watched her get confused by questions that seemed simple. Derek Holt sat at the defense table with the smallest hint of a smile on his face. For the first time since his arrest, he felt hope. The little girl had done her best, but her best might not be enough. The battle was far from over. The morning of the demonstration was cold and gray. Heavy clouds hung over Cedar Falls, and a light rain was falling. People lined up outside the courthouse hours before the doors opened. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. News vans from across the country filled the parking lot. Reporters spoke into cameras, explaining the unusual situation. Inside the courthouse, preparations were being made. A life-size mannequin had been brought in. It was made of heavy plastic, about the size and shape of an adult woman. It was dressed in simple clothes, jeans, and a sweater so the jury could see it clearly. A small set of portable stairs had been set up in the center of the courtroom. They were only 3 steps high, but they represented the top of the basement stairs where Maria had stood that terrible night. The mannequin was placed at the top of the steps. It stood there quietly, waiting for what was about to happen. The courtroom filled up quickly. Every seat was taken. People stood along the walls. Judge Vance had allowed extra reporters inside because of the national attention on the case. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Maria sat in the front row with her mother, Elena. She was holding Elena's hand so tightly that her knuckles were white. Her eyes were fixed on the empty witness area where Lily would soon appear. She had not slept at all the night before. She had spent the hours praying and hoping and believing in her daughter. Derek Holt sat at the defense table with Martin Corwell. Derek tried to look calm, but his foot was tapping nervously under the table. He kept glancing at the mannequin on the steps. He knew that the next few minutes could decide whether he spent the rest of his life in prison or walked out of this courthouse a free man. The jury filed in and took their seats. They looked at the mannequin and the stairs with confusion and curiosity. They had been told something unusual was going to happen, but they didn't know exactly what. Judge Vance called the court to order. The room fell silent instantly. Before we proceed, the judge said, I want to explain what is about to happen. The prosecution has requested that the witness Lily Delgado be allowed to provide a physical demonstration of what she witnessed. On the night of February 14th, I have granted this request under strict conditions. The witness will not be questioned. She will simply show the jury what she saw. If at any point she appears to be in distress, I will stop the demonstration immediately. She turned toward the side door of the courtroom. Please bring in the witness. The door opened, and Lily walked in. She was wearing the same blue dress she had worn before. Her hair was tied back with the same white ribbon, but today, she was not carrying her stuffed rabbit. Dr. Walsh had suggested leaving it behind. Lily needed both hands free for what she was about to do. Dr. Walsh walked beside her, one hand resting gently on Lily's shoulder. They moved slowly through the courtroom. Lily kept her eyes forward. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at Derek. She just walked toward the center of the room, where the mannequin and stairs were waiting. The courtroom was completely silent. You could hear every footstep on the wooden floor. You could hear the soft rustle of Lily's dress as she walked. No one moved. No one breathed. Lily stopped in front of the stairs. She looked at the mannequin for a long moment. It stood at the top of the 3 steps, facing forward, like her mother had stood that night. Judge Vance spoke gently. Lily, whenever you're ready, please show the jury what you saw on the night your mother was hurt. Take your time. There's no rush. Lily nodded. She took a deep breath, just like Dr. Walsh had taught her. She closed her eyes for a second. Then she opened them. What happened next would be remembered by everyone who was there. For the rest of their lives, Lily walked round to the back of the mannequin. She positioned herself directly behind it, just like she had positioned the father doll behind the mother doll all those months ago. She was small. The mannequin was much taller than she was. But that didn't matter. Everyone could see exactly what she was doing. She raised her arms, her small hands spread wide apart, fingers extended, just like she had described. Her arms were fully stretched out, not bent at the elbows. She wasn't mimicking a grab or a reach. This was a push, a deliberate, powerful push. And then she did it. Her hands pressed firmly into the back of the mannequin. Her whole body leaned forward with emotion. Her arms drove forward with all the strength her small body could manage. The mannequin tipped off balance and fell forward. Tumbling down the 3 steps, it crashed onto the floor with a loud, horrible sound. The fall was violent. The mannequin bounced once on the steps and landed face down on the ground below. One of its arms twisted awkwardly underneath it. Its head hit the floor hard. The whole demonstration lasted exactly 4 seconds. But in those 4 seconds, everything changed. Someone in the jury box gasped. One woman covered her mouth with her hand. A man in the back row of the jury had tears running down his cheeks. They had all tried to act out this push themselves, stumbling around their jury room, confused about distances and angles. But now they could see it. Now they understood. This was not a trip. This was not someone losing their balance while carrying laundry. This was a push from behind, hard, deliberate, meant to send someone crashing down the stairs. Lily stood frozen in place, her arms still extended from the push. Her face was pale but determined. She had done it. She had shown them the truth. Judge Vance was the first to speak. "Thank you, Lily. You may step down now." Dr. Walsh hurried forward and put her arm around Lily. She guided the little girl away from the stairs, away from the fallen mannequin. As they walked toward the side door, Lily finally allowed herself to look at her mother. Maria was crying. Her whole body was shaking with sobs, but she was also smiling, a proud, heartbroken, beautiful smile. She nodded at her daughter. That single nod said everything. "I love you. I'm proud of you. You did it." Lily gave a tiny smile back. Then she was gone, through the door and out of the courtroom. The judge called a short recess. People needed a moment to process what they had just seen. Some jurors wiped their eyes. Others sat in stunned silence. The reporters were scribbling frantically in their notebooks or whispering into their phones. Derek Holt sat at the defense table like a statue. His face had gone completely white. His hands were trembling. For the first time since the trial began, he looked scared, truly scared. Corwell leaned over and whispered something to him, but Derek didn't seem to hear. He was staring at the mannequin still lying face down on the floor. That was his wife. That was Maria. And 12 people had just seen exactly what he had done to her. When the jury returned to their room for deliberations, something had changed. The doubt that had divided them for 2 days was gone. The confusion about angles and distances didn't matter anymore. They had seen the push with their own eyes. They had seen the truth. The foreman, Harold, looked around the table. "I think we should take another vote," he said quietly. "All in favor of guilty." 12 hands went up. Every single one. There was no discussion, no argument, no need for more debate. The demonstration had shown them everything they needed to know. Harold wrote the verdict on a piece of paper. He folded it carefully and handed it to the court officer. Then the jury filed back into the courtroom to deliver their decision. In just 4 seconds, a little girl had changed everything. The truth had finally been seen. Anna Chen sat alone in her office that night. The courthouse was empty and dark. Everyone else had gone home, but Anna couldn't leave. She kept reading through the case files, looking at the evidence, searching for anything that could break the deadlock. The jury had been sent home for the night. They would return tomorrow morning for more deliberations. But Anna knew in her heart that they were not going to change their minds. They had tried their best. They had argued for 2 days. Some believed Lily, and some did not. Without new evidence or a new approach, the jury would remain split, and Judge Vance would have to declare a mistrial. Anna thought about Maria, who had nearly died. She thought about Alina, who had watched her daughter suffer for years. She thought about Lily, who had been so brave, who had finally found her voice after weeks of silence. They had all fought so hard. They had all trusted the justice system, and now it was failing them. Anna closed her eyes and tried to think. What was missing? What hadn't they done? What could convince the doubting jurors that Lily was telling the truth? And then it hit her. The jurors had tried to act out the push themselves. They had stumbled around that jury room, pushing each other awkwardly, arguing about angles and distances. They couldn't figure out what the push looked like because they had never seen it. They only had Lily's words to guide them. But Lily didn't just have words. From the very beginning, Lily had shown what happened. She had acted it out with dolls for Dr. Walsh. Her demonstration had been clear and consistent every time. The push was always from behind. The hands were always spread wide. The force was always strong. What if the jury could see that demonstration? Not hear about it, but actually see it. Anna's heart started beating faster. It was a crazy idea. It had almost never been done before. Child witnesses were usually kept far away from courtrooms as much as possible. Asking a child to physically demonstrate a violent act in front of a jury was risky. It could be seen as theatrical, manipulative, even traumatic for the child. But what other choice did they have? Anna picked up her phone and called Dr. Walsh. It was late, almost midnight, but Dr. Walsh answered. "I have an idea," Anna said, "but I need your opinion. Is Lily strong enough to do a physical demonstration in court? Not with dolls this time, but with a full-sized figure that the jury can clearly see." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "It would be difficult for her," Dr. Walsh said slowly. But Lily is stronger than people think. If we prepare her properly, if we make sure she understands what's being asked, I believe she could do it. Would you support the request to the judge, if you think it could help get justice for her mother? Yes, I would support it. Anna thanked her and hung up. Then she started writing. She worked through the night, preparing a motion to present to Judge Vance in the morning. By the time the sun rose, she had finished. The courtroom was packed again when court resumed. Everyone could feel that something was happening. The jurors filed in, looking tired and frustrated. They had been deadlocked for 2 days. They were no closer to a verdict. Judge Vance looked at them with sympathy. Has the jury reached a decision? Harold, the foreman, stood up slowly. No, Your Honor. We remain unable to reach a unanimous verdict. A murmur ran through the courtroom. This was it, the moment everyone had feared. Judge Vance would have to declare a mistrial. But before she could speak, Anna Chen stood up. Your Honor, the prosecution has a request. Judge Vance raised an eyebrow. What is your request, Miss Chen? Anna took a deep breath. We request that the witness Lily Delgado be allowed to return to the courtroom to provide a physical demonstration of what she witnessed, not through words but through showing the jury exactly what she saw. The courtroom exploded with noise. Reporters started whispering frantically. The jurors looked at each other in surprise. Derek Holt's face went pale. Martin Corwell jumped to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. This is completely improper. The witness has already testified. The prosecution is trying to put on a show for the jury. This is theatrical manipulation, nothing more. Anna kept her voice calm. Your Honor, the jury has struggled to understand what Lily saw because they have only heard verbal descriptions. A physical demonstration is not theatrical manipulation. It is a legitimate way for a witness to communicate. Lily first revealed the truth of what happened through physical demonstration with dolls. We are simply asking her to do the same thing, in a way that the jury can clearly see and understand. Judge Vance held up her hand for silence. The courtroom quieted down. This is a highly unusual request, the judge said. I will need to hear arguments from both sides in my chambers. Court is in recess for 1 hour. The next hour was the longest of Anna's life. She sat in Judge Vance's office with Corwell arguing her case. Corwell fought hard against the request. He said it was unfair to the defense. He said it would prejudice the jury. He said it was harmful to the child. But Anna had prepared well. She cited legal precedents from other states where similar demonstrations had been allowed. She presented a letter from Dr. Walsh explaining that Lily was psychologically capable of doing the demonstration. She argued that the jury deserved every opportunity to understand the evidence before being asked to make such an important decision. Judge Vance listened to both sides without interrupting. When they finished, she sat in silence for a long moment, thinking. Finally, she spoke. I am going to allow this request, she said, but with strict conditions. The demonstration will be done using a life-size mannequin, not a real person. The child will not be asked any questions during the demonstration. She will simply show what she saw. If at any point the child appears to be in distress, the demonstration will stop immediately. Corwell's face turned red with anger. Your Honor, I strongly object. Your objection is noted and overruled. Mr. Corwell, the jury has been unable to reach a verdict. Before I declare a mistrial, I believe we should give them every opportunity to fully understand the evidence. The demonstration will take place tomorrow morning. Anna could hardly believe it. She had one. Lily would get one more chance to show the truth. That evening, Anna went to Elena's apartment to explain what would happen. Maria, Elena, and Lily sat together on a small couch, listening carefully. Lily, Anna said gently, kneeling down to look the little girl in the eyes. Tomorrow, we're going to ask you to show the jury what you saw. Not with words, not with dolls, but with a big figure that looks like a person. You'll show them how Derek pushed your mummy. Can you do that? Lily looked at her mother, then at her grandmother. She was scared. Anna could see it in her eyes. But there was something else there too. Something strong. Will it help Mummy? Lily asked. Yes, sweetheart. It will help a lot. Lily nodded slowly. Then I'll do it. Maria pulled her daughter into a tight hug. Tears were streaming down her face. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. You are the bravest person I know. That night, Dr. Walsh came to the apartment to help Lily prepare. They talked about what would happen in the courtroom. They practiced with a large stuffed toy, showing the push over and over. Dr. Walsh taught Lily breathing exercises to help her stay calm. Remember, Dr. Walsh said, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to answer any questions. Just show them what you saw. The same thing you showed me with the dolls. Can you do that? I can do it, Lily said. Her voice was small but steady. Across town, Martin Corwell sat in his office, drinking coffee and thinking. He was worried. A physical demonstration could be very powerful. Juries responded to things they could see. If Lily showed the push clearly and confidently, it could change everything. But Corwell had been a lawyer for 30 years. He had seen witnesses crack under pressure before. He had seen demonstrations go wrong. Maybe Lily would freeze up. Maybe she would get confused. Maybe, under the bright lights and watching eyes of the courtroom, she would fail. He could only wait and see. Derek Holt paced in his small apartment. He had been released on bail and was required to stay away from Maria and Lily. He was angry and scared. Everything had been going so well. The jury was deadlocked. He was so close to freedom. And now this little girl was going to get another chance to point her finger at him. He picked up his phone and called Corwell. "What happens if she does the demonstration?" he asked. "Can she really hurt us?" Corwell was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "It depends on how well she does it. If she's hesitant, unsure, or emotional, we can still win. But if she shows that push clearly and without doubt," he paused, "then we have a problem." Derek hung up the phone. He walked to his window and looked out at the dark streets of Cedar Falls. Somewhere out there, a little girl was preparing to destroy his life, and there was nothing he could do to stop her. Tomorrow, everything would be decided. The trial continued for 3 more days after Lily's testimony. Both sides called more witnesses. Experts argued about the physics of falling downstairs. Doctors explained Maria's injuries again and again. Character witnesses spoke about Derek, some saying he was a good man, others saying he had a violent temper. But everyone in the courtroom knew that the case would be decided by what the jury believed about Lily. Did they trust her memory? Did they believe she really saw what she said she saw? Or had Martin Corwell succeeded in making them doubt her? On the final day, both lawyers gave their closing arguments. Anna Chen spoke first. She stood before the jury and spoke from her heart. "You have heard from many witnesses in this trial," she said. "Doctors, neighbors, friends, experts. But the most important witness was an 8-year-old girl who had the courage to come into this courtroom and tell you what she saw." Lily watched her stepfather push her mother down the stairs. She was so scared that she couldn't speak for 3 weeks. But when she finally found her voice, she told the truth. Anna walked slowly along the jury box, looking at each juror. Mr. Corwell asked Lily many questions. He asked about small details, how Derek's hands were positioned, exactly where she was standing, whether her mother was holding the basket. And yes, Lily couldn't remember every tiny detail. But think about this. Could you remember every small detail of something that happened months ago? Something so terrible that it kept you silent for weeks? She paused to let the question sink in. What Lily does remember is the most important thing. She remembers that Derek pushed her mother. She has said this over and over, from the first time she showed it with dolls to the moment she told you from that witness stand. The core of her memory has never changed. Derek pushed Maria. That is the truth. Anna returned to her seat. She had done everything she could. Martin Corwell rose for his closing argument. He buttoned his jacket and smiled at the jury like an old friend. "Ladies and gentlemen, my heart goes out to everyone involved in this sad case. Maria Delgado was badly hurt. Little Lily was traumatized. These are real tragedies, and I do not dismiss them." He shook his head slowly. "But tragedy does not equal guilt. Something terrible happened to Maria. That does not mean Derek Holt caused it. The prosecution has shown you no video, no confession, no adult witness. Their entire case rests on the memory of an 8-year-old child who was so confused that she couldn't speak for 3 weeks. Corwell's voice grew more serious. "Memory is not like a video recording. It doesn't capture every detail perfectly. This is especially true for children and especially true for traumatic events. Studies have shown that people often believe they remember things they never actually saw. They fill in gaps with information they heard later. They create memories without even knowing they're doing it." He pointed toward the defense table where Derek sat. "Is it possible, just possible?" Lily saw her mother fall and her young mind tried to make sense of it. That in her fear and confusion, she created a story where someone was to blame, that the things she heard adults saying for 3 weeks became mixed up with what she actually saw. Corwell let the questions hang in the air. "To convict Derek Holt, you must be certain beyond a reasonable doubt. Not pretty sure, not probably. Certain. And how can you be certain based on the memories of a traumatized child who couldn't remember basic details of what she saw? How can you send a man to prison for decades based on that?" He walked back to his seat. "The prosecution has not proven its case. Derek Holt is innocent. Please, do the right thing and find him not guilty." Judge Vance gave the jury their instructions. She explained the law. She told them what beyond a reasonable doubt meant. She told them to consider all the evidence carefully. Then she sent them to the jury room to decide Derek Holt's fate. The jury room was a plain space with white walls and a long wooden table surrounded by 12 chairs. There were no windows. A single clock on the wall ticked away the seconds. The 12 jurors sat down and looked at each other. The foreman was a retired schoolteacher named Harold Bennett. He was a calm man in his 60s who had been chosen to lead the discussions. He folded his hands on the table and spoke. "Well," he said, "we have a lot to talk about. Let's start by going around the room. Tell us what you're thinking." The first juror, a young woman named Katie, spoke up. "I believe Lily. I could see it in her eyes. She was telling the truth. She saw Derek push her mother." But the next juror, a middle-aged man named Frank, disagreed. "I don't doubt that Lily believes what she said, but that doesn't mean it really happened. Kids that age get confused." Corwell made a good point about memory. The opinions went back and forth around the table. Some jurors believed Lily completely. Others had serious doubts. A few were somewhere in the middle, unsure what to think. "What about the medical evidence?" asked a juror named Patricia. The doctor said Maria's injuries were consistent with a push. Consistent with, Frank pointed out, not proof of. She also admitted under cross-examination that the injuries could have come from a fall. But what about the bruises on Maria's arms? Katie argued. Those were shaped like fingerprints. Someone grabbed her. Those could have been from before that night. Another juror said, we know Derek had a temper. Maybe they argued earlier that day. That doesn't prove he pushed her down the stairs. The discussion went on for hours. They broke for lunch but couldn't stop talking about the case. They reviewed the evidence, looked at photographs, read through their notes, but they couldn't agree. Finally, Harold made a suggestion. Let's try to understand what Lily saw. She said she was standing by the counter in the kitchen, looking at the basement door. Derek was behind Maria. He pushed her. Let's try to act it out. Maybe that will help us see if it makes sense. The jurors cleared some space in the room. They used the door to the hallway as the basement door. One juror stood in front of it playing Maria. Another stood behind her playing Derek. Okay, Harold said. Show us the push. The juror playing Derek reached out and pushed the other jurors back. It looked awkward. The angles didn't seem right. Wait, said Katie. Lily said Derek's hands were spread wide, like this. She demonstrated. Try it that way. They tried again. It still looked strange. The jurors argued about where exactly Lily had been standing. They argued about how far away the kitchen counter really was. They argued about whether someone standing there could even see the basement door clearly. Different jurors took turns playing the roles. Each time, the push looked different. No one could agree on how it happened. Some versions looked deliberate. Others looked like they could have been accidental. One juror suggested that maybe Derek had been trying to stop Maria from falling and it just looked like a push. After 2 hours of trying, the jurors were frustrated and tired. They sat back down at the table, no closer to agreement than before. We can't even figure out what happened, Frank said. How are we supposed to be certain beyond a reasonable doubt? Harold looked around the room. Let's take a vote. Raise your hand if you vote guilty. 6 hands went up. Not guilty. 4 hands went up. 2 jurors didn't raise their hands at all. They said they couldn't decide. We're split, Harold said heavily. We need to keep talking. They talked for the rest of the day. They talked until the sun went down and the courthouse had to send them home for the night. When they came back the next morning, they talked more, but no one was changing their mind. By the afternoon of the second day, Harold sent a note to Judge Vance. The note said, we cannot reach a unanimous decision. We are deadlocked. Judge Vance called everyone back to the courtroom. She read the note out loud. Then she spoke to the jury. I understand that reaching a decision in this case is difficult, but I am asking you to try once more. Go back to the jury room and continue your deliberations. Sometimes, with more discussion, juries are able to find common ground. The jurors filed back to their room, but their faces were tired and frustrated. They had been over the evidence 100 times. They had argued every point. Some believed Lily, some did not, and neither side was willing to change. In the courthouse hallway, Maria sat on a bench with Alina and cried. Anna Chen paced back and forth, her face tight with worry. A deadlocked jury could mean a mistrial. That meant the whole trial would be thrown out. They would have to start over from the beginning or worse. The charges could be dropped entirely. Derek Holt sat calmly at the defense table, whispering with cool. For the first time in months, he looked almost happy. A mistrial would be a victory for him. Another trial might never happen. He could walk free. In the small waiting room, Lily sat with Dr. Walsh. She didn't understand what was happening. All she knew was that the adults looked worried and sad. She hugged her stuffed rabbit and wondered if she had done something wrong. Did I not do good? She asked Dr. Walsh quietly. Dr. Walsh hugged her tightly. You did wonderfully, sweetheart. You told the truth. That's all anyone could ask. But deep inside, Dr. Walsh was scared. The truth might not be enough. Justice might not come. And a man who had tried to kill his wife might walk free. Because 12 people couldn't agree on what an 8-year-old girl really saw, the hours ticked by. The jury remained locked, and hope began to fade. The courtroom was silent as the jury filed back in. Their faces were serious and calm. They did not look at Derek Holt. They did not look at Maria. They kept their eyes forward, fixed on Judge Vance. Anna Chen felt her heart pounding in her chest. She had tried many cases before, but none had ever mattered as much as this one. She thought about Lily, sitting in the waiting room with Dr. Walsh. She thought about Maria, gripping her mother's hand in the front row. Everything came down to this moment. Judge Vance turned to the jury. Has the jury reached a verdict? Harold Bennett, the foreman, stood up. His voice was steady and clear. Yes, Your Honor, we have. The court officer took the piece of paper from Harold and handed it to Judge Vance. She unfolded it and read it silently. Her expression did not change. Then she handed it to the clerk. The defendant will please rise, she said. Derek Holt stood up slowly. His legs seemed unsteady. Martin Corwell stood beside him, but there was no confidence left in the defense lawyer's face. He looked like a man who already knew the answer. The clerk read the verdict in a loud, clear voice. In the matter of the state of Iowa versus Derek Holt, on the charge of attempted murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty." The courtroom erupted. People gasped, cried, and shouted. Reporters rushed out to call their news stations. Maria collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing with relief and joy. Anna Chen closed her eyes and let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for months. Derek Holt stood frozen. The color had drained from his face. He looked like he couldn't believe what he had heard. Then his legs gave out, and he had to grab the table to keep from falling. 2 court officers moved forward and took him by the arms. "Order," Judge Vance called out, banging her gavel. "Order in the court." The room slowly quieted down. Judge Vance looked at Derek with cold, steady eyes. "Mr. Holt, you have been found guilty of attempted murder. I will sentence you in 2 weeks' time. Until then, you will be held in custody without bail." She nodded to the officers. "Take him away." Derek tried to say something. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The officers led him toward the side door. As he passed the front row, he looked at Maria one last time. There was hatred in his eyes, pure, burning hatred. Maria met his gaze without flinching. She was not afraid of him anymore. She would never be afraid of him again. Then Derek was gone. Through the door and out of the courtroom, Anna walked over to Maria and Elena. She hugged them both. "You did it," she said. "All of you. You got justice." Maria wiped her eyes. "Lily did it," she said. "She's the one who saved us." In the waiting room, Dr. Walsh was explaining to Lily what had happened. The little girl listened quietly, her face hard to read. "The jury said Derek is guilty," Dr. Walsh said gently. "That means they believe you. That means justice has been done." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Does that mean he can't hurt Mummy anymore?" "That's right. He's going to prison for a very long time. He can never hurt your mummy again." Lily nodded. A small smile appeared on her face, the first real smile Dr. Walsh had seen in months. "Good," she whispered. "That's good." The door opened, and Maria came in. She was crying and smiling at the same time. She rushed across the room and scooped Lily up in her arms, holding her tight. "My brave, brave girl," Maria whispered into her daughter's hair. "You saved my life. Twice. First by calling 911, and then by showing everyone the truth. I am so proud of you. I love you so much." Lily wrapped her arms around her mother's neck. "I love you too, Mummy." They held each other for a long time. Elena and Dr. Walsh stood nearby, wiping their own tears. Outside the room, they could hear reporters shouting questions and cameras flashing. But in that small space, there was only a mother and daughter, finally safe, finally free. 2 weeks later, the courtroom gathered one more time for Derek's sentencing. This time, the atmosphere was different. There was no tension, no uncertainty. Everyone knew what was coming. Maria gave a victim impact statement. She stood at the front of the room and spoke directly to the judge. "For years, I lived in fear," she said, her voice shaking but strong. "I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid to leave. I was afraid of what Derek would do to me or my daughter. When he pushed me down those stairs, he thought he could silence me forever. But he didn't count on Lily." She turned and looked at her daughter, who was sitting in the front row with Elena. "My daughter showed more courage than I ever did. She spoke up when I couldn't. She told the truth when I had no memory. She is my hero. And because of her, I get to stand here today. I get to watch my daughter grow up. I get to live." She turned back to the judge. "I ask for the maximum sentence, Your Honor, not for revenge, but for safety, so that Derek Holt can never hurt anyone else the way he hurt me." Derek was given the chance to speak. He stood up, but he didn't look sorry. He looked angry. "I didn't do it," he said flatly. "I never pushed her. That little girl is lying. Her mother and grandmother turned her against me. I'm innocent, and someday the truth will come out." Judge Vance looked at him with disgust. "Mr. Holt, a jury of your peers has found you guilty. The evidence against you was clear, and the fact that you stand here today, still blaming a child for your crimes, shows me that you have no remorse whatsoever." She picked up her gavel. "For the crime of attempted murder in the first degree, I sentence you to 25 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 15 years. May God have mercy on your soul." The gavel came down. Derek was led away in handcuffs. He did not look back. After the sentencing, reporters swarmed around Maria outside the courthouse. They shouted questions, pushed microphones toward her face, begged for comments. Maria held Lily's hand and faced the cameras. "I want to thank everyone who supported us through this terrible time," she said. "The doctors who saved my life, the police officers who believed something was wrong, Dr. Walsh who helped my daughter find her voice, and Anna Chen who fought for justice." She paused and looked down at Lily. "But most of all, I want to thank my daughter. She saved my life twice, once by calling 911, and again by being brave enough to show the truth. She is the strongest, bravest person I have ever known, and I am so grateful to be her mother." A reporter called out, "Lily, how do you feel now that it's over?" Lily looked up at her mother, then at the cameras. She thought for a moment. Then she said, in her small, clear voice, "I feel happy, because my mommy is safe now, and because I told the truth." The crowd went quiet. Some reporters had tears in their eyes. It was a simple answer from a simple child, but it meant everything. 6 months later, Maria and Lily moved to California. Maria's sister had a small house near the ocean, with a garden full of flowers and a swing in the backyard. They started a new life there. Far away from Cedar Falls and the painful memories, Maria went back to school to become a counselor for victims of domestic violence. She wanted to help other women who were trapped the way she had been. She wanted to teach them that they were not alone, that there was hope, that they could escape. Lily started at a new school. She made friends. She joined the art club. She smiled more. She laughed more. The nightmares slowly faded. She still saw Dr. Walsh through video calls every few weeks, but she needed them less and less. One day, about a year after the trial, Lily came home from school with a big piece of paper in her hands. It was a drawing she had made in art class. It showed a house by the ocean, with a smiling sun, and two figures standing outside, a tall woman and a small girl, holding hands. At the bottom, in careful handwriting, Lily had written, "My family." Maria hung the picture on the refrigerator. She looked at it every day, the sunshine, at the flowers, at the two figures standing together. It was a picture of happiness, a picture of healing, a picture of a new beginning. The nightmare was over. A new story had begun, and it started with a brave little girl who refused to stay silent, who found a way to speak when words failed her, who showed a room full of strangers the truth in just 4 seconds. Lily never forgot what she had done, but she no longer let it define her. She was not just the girl who testified. She was not just the witness. She was Lily, a daughter, a student, a friend, a dreamer. She was a survivor, and her whole life was still ahead of her.